Alright, so now we're in the Photoshop portion of our process. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up our JPEG file from the scanner. So again, that's 1200 DPI image just scanned on a regular 8.5 by 11 flatbed scanner. And you can even see this white line here at the bottom of the image, and how there's kind of almost a little bit of a blurry line here, and that's actually just a transparent piece of film I put on the glass so that I didn't scratch the flatbed when I was scanning this rock. You can see the kind of wrinkles there. Anyway, so again, this is a JPEG image, so if you zoom in, even though it's really high resolution, it's still pixelated. So, and also we can't really tell exactly. I mean, we can visually tell what the difference between what's touching the glass and isn't, because I painted the flat portion of this rock white, so that kind of helps us see what is flat and what is the rest of the rock, what's the background. But we want to actually go in there and make it really high contrast, just make everything that we want to be cut out on the water jet black, and then everything else white. So how we do that is we come in here on our layers tab, so bottom right, and if I double click on that, it unlocks it. There was a little lock bar there, and then if I right click, duplicate layer, I can make a second layer, just because generally you want to do that anytime you're editing photos. So I'm going to turn off one of these duplicates, and then what I'm going to use is a quick mask. It's this here, it's Q, and what that does is it's a selection tool in Photoshop. Basically, if I come over here and use my brush, and I'm going to make this a smaller size. You want your hardness up to 100%. And then the size of your brush, we'll just put it at a larger size so you can see what's going on. But basically, let's see. So your brush, you've got black and white, and anything that's black is going to be kind of this opaque red layer. And then when you go out of quick mask mode, hitting Q again, it's going to create a selection. Anything that's red isn't selected. Anything that's not red is the selection. So what we're going to try to do is basically outline this thing so we're only selecting the rock. So what I would do is I would come in here, and again, this is just however fine a detail you want to get, but I'm going to make my brush, I would normally go around this whole thing and make a 20 pixel line, and even be more careful than that, and outline this whole rock. But for the sake of expediency, we're just gonna make this a lot rougher. So this red will actually, I believe it makes it so it's what's not selected. So there we go. So assuming that completely tightly followed that contour, and while I'm doing this, I'm also making some decisions. I'll go back into this mode here real quick. You can see there was like these are almost islands, but since I want to cut it out of one hunk of aluminum, I actually kind of bridge some of those gaps, and I did it a lot more intentionally on the actual piece. But anyway, so there is the quick mask selection, and again, if you mess up, you can always, if you select something you didn't mean to select, you can inverse, go from black to white on your brush. You can also press X, does the same thing, and then the white will actually unselect that. So I'm going to undo that. But yeah, so if you wanted to kind of clean something up, just use the white brush and that'll do that. So again, pressing Q, back to our normal selection mode. So now I've got it selected, so if I press delete, boom, there is, I've got basically a white background. It's checkerboard, but that's just Photoshop's background. It's nice to help, I don't know, you know when there isn't something there, because if it was white, it'd be hard to tell between nothing and white. So anyway, but now I also want to have the positive space black. So I can go up to selection and inverse, and then use the same brush tool, black, and you could make it even bigger if you wanted. And go in here and black all that selection out. Okay, and then deselect everything, Control D. So now you've got basically a black and white, high contrast JPEG. So you can just save that as a JPEG, or you can save it, well, I would save it as a JPEG. A PNG, you will actually have a transparent background. With a JPEG, you'll have a white background. It won't really matter for this, but and we'll just call this tutorial. Because, as you may have seen, I have a lot of other copies that are done better. So, it's my file converting tool. Let's open up Illustrator, and we'll convert that to a vector image. Okay, so now we're in Illustrator, and we're going to open up our tutorial. So, okay, so now we're in Illustrator, and we've opened up our tutorial file. So you can see it's got a white background, and there's the black shape, and it is still a raster image. If you zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, you can see it's got this pixelated edge, and that's not what we want. So we're going to zoom out here, and we're going to go to bring up the image trace window, and then we can select this image, and what we're going to do is we're going to click on this advanced tab, ignore that white background, so we don't have preview clicked, because if we click preview, it's going to slow things down a lot while we're tweaking and making these changes. So your threshold right there, pixels darker, are converted to black. So in this case, it doesn't matter as much. If you had a grayscale image, this would determine what's selected, what's not selected. Here, this should be fine. Path fitting, I usually go with a pretty high value. This is something we can tweak. Corners, I go all the way up on that, because I'm usually looking for the most accurate. Also, noise, higher value means less noise, so I'm okay with noise. I want something super accurate, so I put that all the way down. So then we can do a preview. And we can zoom in here, and we can see that it's kind of fit all those lines, and this is not pixelated anymore. And in this view, you can even see outlines with source image, and even though it's off a little bit, that's fine. It's just offset the whole thing. It's not see everything shifted that one way a little bit. That's fine, but you do want to kind of pay attention to any detail you lose in here. So again, you can see anchors. It's got 1100 anchors. If you push that up, I'll just take a second. Okay, now I've got 5400 anchors, and this came through and did a lot more of a jagged line. So you can play with how Illustrator interprets your line. The So when you're done with that, you actually are just going to click expand, and now you don't have your image anymore, you just have a vector. And if you go Control Y, which is wireframe, you'll be able to see that wireframe. Click on it, there's all your grips. I'll go Control Y again to come out of wireframe. You can see those grips. So one thing though is it did say there were two paths on there, so that means that there's actually might be an island in here somewhere. So what I always do is I always right click and then ungroup, click off the board somewhere, click on it again. So let's see if we move this thing. I'll zoom out a little bit. So for some reason it always gives you this outline. I delete that. And now if you come over here to your layers tab, okay, so now we've got this is one path, one continuous path, and that's exactly what we want for our Fusion file. Okay, so the only other thing you want to do is just create a rectangle. So click anywhere, and looks like we're actually in pixels per unit, so that's something. Preferences, units, general. We're going to go into inches. Everything can be inches, it doesn't, but the main thing is the general units have to be inches. And now you can click and make a rectangle that is 1 inch by 1 inch. And what that's going to do is be something that gives us a scale for when we actually bring this into Illustrator. And I'm going to flip that and make it an outline, and I'm going to make it a pretty fine line. Let's see if we can even go a little bit finer. Okay, so, and we're going to bring this artboard to cover the whole thing. That was Shift O. You can move. I could have moved the art onto the artboard, but instead I moved the artboard onto the art. So now you've got this object, and we're going to save as an SVG. We're going to use the artboards. We're going to call it tutorial again. All these options should be good. Okay, and sorry, before I leave Illustrator, I do want to do one thing. I want to create a image that I can put into Fusion as kind of a reference, but I also want to have that square there so that I can scale it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place not that tutorial image, I'm going to place the original photo scan with the holes in there, and this will be placed again to scale because the scanner does it to scale. And what I would normally do would be bring that down as a layer, put my path on top of it, and again you could kind of fit them on there, but this would be also a good chance to make sure not just with looking at that black and white image, but you could actually use your color image to see how your trace is fitting up. So this line again is the vector line, and this was your original raster image. And I do this for a couple reasons. One, because I always like to see what's going on with whatever I'm modeling, whatever I'm doing in relation to the actual rock piece, where I can see that picture. But also these holes, I'll draw these circles in Fusion just because it'll just be a little bit more accurate. I also usually would bring in the cups, a picture of the cups, and trace those into Fusion because I'll be able to do it with less grips than doing a live trace like this, like I did for the rock. So anyway, what we're going to do now is I'll turn off my outline of my path there, and you can see now I've got the image and this line, and I might even make that line white there, so that shows up a little bit better. And now I can export this, and I'm going to export this image as a JPEG. I'm going to use my artboards, and I'm going to call this tutorial scan with scale. And this is actually, you could make this 1200 dpi, and I think I will. Just that'll help you actually see that square and keep that high resolution. So exporting that artwork, and now we really will go into Fusion 360. So here we are with a new Fusion file, and the first thing we're going to want to do is get our units into inches, because that's what I scan everything in with. And then we're going to insert that SVG. We're going to put it on just the horizontal top plane. Tutorial. And it really doesn't matter how you scale this. One thing I have noticed is that for some reason SVGs coming in come at well, we'll just do it like this first. So if I just put it in right where it puts it in by default, and we just inspect this length, you can see right here this distance is 0.75. I have no idea why, so let's just undo all that. There's a couple ways you could do that. You could do this again, insert SVG, and then just put it in again, and instead of scale 1, you can put 1.3333, which is the inverse of 0.75, and then you'll get 1 inch there. The other way is you could scale it after the fact. If you insert an SVG, that same tutorial file, at that scale. And this actually is kind of tricky. It's a little hard if you go to sketch, because this is a sketch now, and if you scale sketch, I've had trouble selecting this thing before, but if you actually should be able to select that over here first. So actually select that whole sketch and sketch scale. Let's try that. Well, anyway, you see the other two ways that are pretty easy to do it. So, oh, maybe that. I see. Okay, so looks like you might have to stop the sketch. Now, let's try modify, scale. And then now I've got one entity selected. So now the whole entity is selected because it's clicked on here, and I could do a scale again of 1.333. And that's going to scale it up. So there, I mean, this is something, now it's a sketch, and so I could create as I want to do from this, and I could extrude and build up from that. And you can see this is pretty complicated, but it's actually at least working fairly quickly. My larger, more detailed shapes with like 5,000 points can be pretty onerous, but now we've got a weird abstract shape, but that could be like a silhouette of a person or whatever you decide to do in your Adobe Photo and Illustrator software, and then you can bring it in here and make an extrusion. So that's pretty cool, and really that's kind of the bulk of the preparatory hard work. The only thing I'd say is I also, for reference, sometimes put in an attached canvas, just to have that photograph. And so there I just select a face to put it in. So just putting it in the same plane as the SVG, and so we've got that tutorial JPEG. Oh, wrong one. That was the I want the tutorial scan with the scale. So this is the one with that little rectangle in there. And it's that 1200 dpi file, so it might take a little while. So, okay. And now I don't have to worry about scaling it. I might just move it off here so it's a little easier to see. Just click OK. Taking time to think. And so now I've got that square in there, and I can come in here on the left and click, right click, calibrate, and zoom in, and pick the first point to calibrate, and this other point here, I just kind of click in the center of the white line. So now I want to make that distance of the square, right now it's happened to be 0.75, kind of. We'll make it exactly 1.00 inches. So now we've got this image that is calibrated. We can also edit that and maybe turn down that opacity a little bit, and can also move it over. So if this was more detailed, I would also come in here and I would line it up, and that would give me a chance to really have my exact vector overlaid on top of my photographic work. So click OK. Now I've got this great thing, and if I want to come in here and actually find those holes, I can use my photo as a reference guide. It's pretty slow going right now because it's some big files. So that's where turning things off can kind of help too. Yeah, so now I can really accurately, that's a 1/2 inch hole I'm looking for, so I can just make it 1/2 inch. And now it's all lined up, and then if I wanted to extrude this shape, the rock shape, create, extrude, we'll go down, that'll be easier. We'll go down, so now I could extrude that however thick, and that's my aluminum interface. And now I can extrude this little hole and have it go either all the way through or whatever to kind of cut that bolt hole for the interface. And again, these cups, all of that, I would have separate photo files, but it's basically the same kind of a process. I mean, the main trick is scanning in an image, making high contrast in Photoshop, bringing it in Illustrator, and then bringing it into here. So really, yeah, from there, the modeling's pretty easy, and then it's just a matter of cam work to be able to set your tool paths and carve it. So thank you for watching this video, and please check out the website for my other videos to go into some more detail on this other stuff, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks again.